shell and tube type of heat exchanger, the the configuration is neither pure counterflow nor pure cross flow, right? The reason is the flow may be like this, right? As you can see here, if there is only single pass of tube side fluid, so that is schematically shown here. So tube side fluid, it enters from this direction at temperature T1 and comes out at temperature T2, and there is, let's say, single pass on the tube side. And on the shell side, this is the another fluid which is entering from shell side. Capital T1 is its temperature, and then you have put baffles, right? And on one side of the baffle there is some opening, so it has to flow. The shell side fluid has to flow in a particular direction. Now, if you consider only one pass, in a way you can say, then it is cross flow, right? Then it is cross flow, but then it is moving in direction opposite to the tube side fluid, right? Enters from the side where the tube side fluid exits, right? And exits from the side from where the tube side fluid enters. So it's a combination of cross flow and counter flow, and you have to put baffles because otherwise it will take a shortest route, least resistance route, and in that case many areas, right, in the corners will not be utilized, right? The fluid will not wet those surfaces. So it's necessary from point of view of mechanical strength as well as thermal performance point of view to put baffles, right? If your shell and tube heat exchanger, most of the times, if it is not having baffles, then though you may say that the area is large, but then if the area is not utilized, it is of no use. Right, so this thing, like, because when it is closed, you don't know what is there inside, right? Whether baffles are there or not, and proper lengths, whether baffles are put at proper distances or not. And in that case, you may find that the performance of the shell and tube heat exchanger is very poor. You may say that the U is very poor, but U may not be poor, but you may not be actually utilizing the area properly. So this is an important aspect of a shell and tube heat exchanger. Okay, so it is neither cross flow nor counter flow. So which like when you calculate the log mean temperature difference, right? So what are you going to do? You are going to find the temperature difference here. You are going to find the temperature difference here, and using that, you may find the log mean temperature difference if the flow is purely counter flow, right? So that will be like, if you consider this to be section 1, right? Normally I don't write 1 and 2. Normally one should write, means I prefer that you write Ti on the tube side, right? TO on the tube side, or TE exit on the tube side, and then here you write TI on the shell side, or like you may distinguish them as hot fluid and cold fluid. So here, let's say this one is hot fluid, so you may write THI, THO, right? And here you may write, if this is cold fluid, TCI, TCO. Okay, so and then this is, let's say this is section 1 and this is section 2. So you find out the temperature difference between these two. You can find out the temperature difference between these two. So delta T1 and delta T2, and then you can find out the log mean temperature difference from point of view of counter flow. Okay, so that will be this, but then you know that it's not purely counter flow, though many times like when you put more number of baffles and area is properly utilized, you may find that this correction factor is quite large. That is, the maximum value of F is 1, so it may be quite close to 1 if it is a well designed shell and tube heat exchanger, but still F value will never be equal to 1. It will be generally less than 1. So you have to find this correction factor in case of shell and tube type of heat exchanger. Now, what are the factors on which this, or how you can find this correction factor in a given configuration of shell and tube type of heat exchanger? So shell and tube type of heat exchanger, actually there is only one configuration of that shown. There can be multiple passes on the tube side. So here I have shown only one line, but I may show that there is a line here and then it takes a U-turn. Schematical, I may show that U-turn is outside this box, but the whole thing is inside that. So it takes a U-turn and comes out from the same side. And even on the shell side, multiple passes are used. Okay. So this is log mean temperature difference, which is already explained. And then, as I was talking about, there can be two tube passes, and in this case, it is single shell side pass. Okay. Then there are other varieties also possible, as I said that it need not be limited to two tube side passes. It may be 2, 4, 6, and so on. And again on the shell side, it can be 2, 4, 6, or and so on. Right. So then what does this log mean temperature depend upon? So there are two things which are found, two parameters which are found. One is called P and another is called R. So as you can see, this P is the temperature difference between the tube side inlet and exit temperatures, and this is the entry temperatures, or P is equal to T2 minus small t2 minus small t1, capital T1 minus small t1. So this is the maximum temperature difference, right? This could be the hot fluid entry and the cold fluid entry. So this is the maximum temperature difference. So that ratio is called P parameter. And then R parameter is the shell side temperature difference upon tube side temperature difference. So this F is a function of P and R. It is seen that F is function of P and R. Now, if you have two tube side passes and single pass on the shell side, then this correction factor, the formula is given here. And if you have two number of tube side passes and two number of shell side passes and 4 number of tube side passes, then this is the formula. And this involves A and B, and A and B are again shown, the values are shown here. Right, so either you can use this formula in exam, of course, in case you have to use the formula, you have to do the calculations manually, which may be a bit tedious. But in the real life, in age of computers, calculations are very fast. So you can feed this in a program, and you can very easily get the correction factor. Otherwise, there are graphs which are provided, and with the help of graphs, you can, based on P and R, you can get the value of F. Okay. So this, as I just told, the first subscript and second subscripts here first shows the number of shell and then number of tube side passes, the second one, and accordingly you have to what is the configuration in your case, accordingly you have to use the right formula or right graph. And here there is one handbook mentioned, which is it's a data book, and it's a kind of Bible or Gita for chemical engineers, right? Paris handbook. So they use it very frequently for getting the, it is a data book basically, right, which gives the formula as well as many tables. And there are certain assumptions which are generally made while analyzing a shell and tube type of heat exchanger problem, that it is a steady state process, then the specific heat of each stream remains constant, then overall heat transfer coefficient also remains constant. The elements of a given fluid stream experience the same thermal history as they pass through the heat exchanger, right? And heat losses are negligible. That is, whatever heat transfer is taking place is between the two fluids, right? If you recall what you learned in thermodynamics, you used to tell that heat exchanger is an adiabatic system, right? So one may ask, when there is a heat exchange, why do you call it adiabatic? So the reason is that the heat exchange is an internal process between the two fluids. It's not between the system and the surroundings. So no heat loss to the surroundings, and most of the times it is desirable, right? Unless you want to cool a hot fluid which is on the shell side. So in that case, you may not insulate the shell and allow heat loss to the ambient also. But in most of the analysis, you have to assume that the two fluids are exchanging heat, and that's the only heat exchange which is taking place in the heat exchanger. Okay, so now there are graphs shown. This is the overall method of finding the overall heat transfer coefficient, which is already discussed, right? And then you find out the heat transfer coefficients on the tube side as well as on the shell side. We will not go into the analysis of the shell side heat transfer coefficients, though some discussion on that is given in this literature. Like this is discussing the shell side heat transfer, how to find shell side heat transfer coefficient, but we will not do that exercise. It is a bit detailed and involved exercise. And you can also find the pressure drops, right, with the help of the relevant formula on the tube side as well as on the shell side. You have to find the F, that is the friction factor, Moody's friction factor, and then based on that you can find out delta P. And there are many practical considerations which you have to take care if you are designing a heat exchanger, right? So in a smaller area, higher heat transfer rate is always desirable. So in that case, you will try to make it compact. You will try to use very good material, but then cost is also an important consideration. Okay, so what is the cost per kilowatt or kilowatt hour? That may be an important consideration. Okay, so now what we are going to do is take the previous example as the base and solve it for shell and tube type of heat exchanger configuration, right? So you can read this data, this in red, typed in red color. So above process is carried out. I hope you're ready with your tools, right? Your pen calculator, etc. Above process is carried out in a shell and tube type of heat exchanger. So I'm talking about the same example which we solved for tube in tube type of heat exchanger. So the heat transfer rate is same what you found earlier, and I'm also not calculating the overall heat transfer coefficient, but I am accepting this as the heat transfer coefficient. So that's 1995 watt per meter square Kelvin. Right, that's the heat transfer coefficient for, say, what you get in the shell and tube type of heat exchanger also, right? If I have to find the overall heat transfer coefficient on the shell and tube type of heat exchanger, then what I have to do is I have to find the tube side heat transfer coefficient. I have to find the shell side heat transfer coefficient. I may have to consider the fouling resistance on either side as well as the wall resistance of the tube, right? So, but I have that exercise is not done here, and we are say you have been provided the overall heat transfer coefficient, and in that case, again, some of the details of the configuration are also given to you, as you can read that this is carried out in a shell and tube type of heat exchanger with two tube side passes, right? So there are two tube side passes for hot water. Okay, so we are taking hot water on the tube side and the cold water is taken on the shell side. And there is only one pass on the shell side, right? Though not written clearly here, but like when it is not written, I think you can presume that there is only one shell side pass. And then you are going to take 10 tubes of 9.5 millimeter diameter in one pass, right? And there are two such passes, so there are in total 20 tubes. 10 into 2 passes, so 20 tubes. Overall heat transfer coefficient is same as that in the previous example, right? And so what will be the length of the heat exchanger in this case, right? That is what you want to find out. Now I'm not very sure whether you have understood the configuration of the shell and tube type of heat exchanger or not. I think I'll be able to show you one diagram with the help of which you will be able to understand the configuration. So this diagram, I think this diagram can help you to understand the configuration. Let me make it, or let me check if it is there in book. So the configuration is something like this one. It, so you can draw such a diagram in your while you are solving this example. So even now you can draw this diagram when you are solving this example. Yeah, it's already there actually here, right? Though it's a bit small in size. So that shows the kind of configuration, or rather schematic. Okay, schematic for the given configuration. But how exactly does it look? So this diagram may help you for that. Okay, so this diagram. So it can be like this. This is the baffle, right? This is the baffle. Okay, and in that the holes are made, and you are going to put the baffles like this. Okay, there are only two baffles shown, but there will be multiple baffles. And then this is the end where the tubes will be supported. Okay, and if there are two tube side passes, then like you will have, if you show the full circle, then you can put number of tubes in symmetry, right? So if there are 10 tubes, you can see this full circle here, let's say, though it is shown for different for a different configuration. So what you may show, or what might be the case, is that if you make two semicircles, 10 tubes may be put at on the top part, in the top part, and 10 tubes in the bottom part, right? So in, let's say, it enters from bottom and goes to the other end and comes out from the so 10 tubes at the top and 10 tubes at the bottom. So that is how it might be put. So those are the two tube side passes. So now you want to find out different things, and you are going to use these graphs. You are going to use these graphs. Like if you have to find out the correction factor. It seems that these graphs are not there in Incropera debit, or maybe it is at some other place. I think it should be there in Yunus Angel, if not in Incropera debit. So I can supply them to you separately. Yeah. So this type of graphs are there, but for that you need to find out P and R, right? So get the P and R value and tell me what are the values you get. So what is P? P was the maximum temperature difference is in the denominator and tube side temperature difference is in the numerator. Okay. So what are the temperatures here? What are the temperatures that you're talking about? You're talking about the same temperatures which were used here, right? So in this case, your which is on the tube side, it is water, hot water. So 90 and 60, right? Those are the two tube side temperatures. So that will be in the denominator, the difference between those two. And what are the shell side temperature values? It is 30 and the outlet temperature you found, right? So what was the outlet temperature of water? It was 49.82. So 30 and 49.82. Those are the two temperatures on the shell side. So for P, what you are going to do? For P, this difference, that is 30 degrees divided by the maximum temperature difference. So what is the maximum temperature difference? It is 90 minus 30, right? So that is 60. So what is the value of P? The answer is very simple. What is the value of P? Please type in the value of P and then I will talk about the value of R. Yeah, so very simple. It's 0.5, right? Based on these two values, the tube side temperature difference is 90 minus 60, so that is 30, and the maximum temperature difference is 90 minus 30, so that is 60. So 30 upon 60 is 0.5. And now the value of R. So what is R? R is the shell side temperature difference divided by tube side temperature difference. So shell side temperature difference is this. Cold water comes out at 49.82. So 49.82 minus 30 divided by tube side temperature difference 90 and 60, right? So tell me what is the value of R that you are getting. Okay, so I hope it's not only Sagar who is awake and all are there, right, with full attention. So that's the value of P and R. So let's go to that, right? So P is tube side temperature difference upon maximum temperature difference. So you get it 0.5, and here you get it this cold water difference upon the hot water difference, right? So cold water difference is the shell side difference. Let me zoom it a bit. So R is 0.661 shell side temperature difference upon tube side temperature difference, right? Okay. So what is the value of F that you get? You have to get it from graph like this, right? Graph like this. So what is this graph showing? It shows the relation. It will be able to give you correction factor F based on the value of P and based on the value of R, right? So your P value is 0.5, right? So you will move along this line, and F value is 0.661. So that's between this is for 0.8, this curve is for 0.8, and this curve is for 0.6. Okay. So 0.5, and you are between this point 0.8 here and 0.6 here, but it is 661, so 0.66 roughly, so it might be somewhere here, right? So it you should be somewhat higher than 85, right? You should be somewhat higher than 85. Do you agree with this, or you don't know? I took the wrong line. This is 0.5, and this is 0.8, and this is 0.6, so it's somewhere here. So it's very close to 0.9, right? Seems to be close to 0.9. So whenever you are choosing the value from a graph, it will not be accurate value, right? It will not be accurate value. Okay, so good. Rajput Mahendra is also there, and Sagar is again quick enough, and he is told that it is somewhere around 0.9, right? So I agree with that. If you want to get a better estimate, then you should use the formula, right? If you want to get a better estimate, more accurate estimate, then you should use the formula. So I hope that you will do it with the formula also. So is it F? Is it? Are you going to use this formula? Yes, you are going to use this formula, the first one, right? So get the value of A, right? A is used here. So get the value of A and then put it here. Okay, A, R, and P are to be used, and this will give you a more accurate estimate of value of F, and then you can compare it. The value that I have used is correct or not. I have used 0.92, right? But check and tell me whether you get that value or not, right? 0.92. So I'm not telling you that you do it now, but later on you can do it and you can post your answer. That F value according to the formula is this. Okay. Now the diameter of the tube is 9.5 given, right? And there are 10 such tubes which will be there in one pass, and in the another pass there will be 10 more tubes. So what is the area? One thing is, now what is the effective log mean temperature difference? So now you tell me what is the effective log mean temperature difference. Same parameters as they were in the previous example of tube in tube type of heat exchanger. So if you have the value of log mean temperature difference available with you, handy with you, you can just multiply it with 0.92. You can just multiply it with 0.92 and tell me what is the log mean temperature difference to be used here. So the log mean temperature difference for the counter flow was it was 34.843 for counter flow. Now you multiply it with the F, right, 0.92, and that will give you the number for this log mean temperature difference. So Sairaj is telling that it is around 32.05. So it's somewhere around 32. Let's see. Right. So I expect you to get the value, like more accurate value of F, and then get the log mean temperature difference. So log mean temp, I have directly multiplied it here, but if you want to get that multiplication, it is 32.06 to be very accurate. So that's the like effective log mean temperature difference in case of this counterflow heat exchanger. So it reduced from around 38 to around 32, right? Now you put this value of, so now you want to get the new area of heat exchange. So that is Q upon U into the corrected value of this log mean temperature difference. So the area of heat exchange that you should provide is around 3.841 meters square. You can calculate and check it. Now, so what should be the length of tube? Right, there are 20 tubes. Each tube is going to provide how much area? Pi d into length of the tube. Right, each tube will provide that area. And now here we are not distinguishing between the outside surface area and inside surface area. I've just taken it 9.5. So pi d into length, right? Length is not known. So you have to get the length, right? So this is n number of tubes into pi into d into L would give you the area, right? So area, how much area you should provide is already known. You have to provide this much area. So based on that, you can get the length of this heat exchanger, which will do the same job as that of the that of the tube in tube type of heat exchanger. So as you can see, the length is coming out to be around 6.435 meter, around 6.5 meter. So it is reduced from 45 meter to 6 meter. Of course, you increased the diameter, right? Now it fits into like you have to check like how you can, what should be the pitch, the lateral pitch and the longitudinal pitch or the diagonal pitch, and how you can arrange the tubes. So what should be the shell diameter, right? That depends upon how you put the or arrange the tubes inside the shell, and there would be very like many different considerations even for that, right? You may have to consider even the shell side heat transfer coefficient and shell side pressure drop, etc. In that case also, and then again some manufacturing considerations also might come into picture. So we are not going into that, but at least you can see that the length has reduced. So it may be difficult to manage such a long length of 45 meters, right? But if you pack it in this 6.5 meters, it will be easier to have proper access to different parts of it and manage that much length, right? So this is about shell and tube type of heat exchanger, and so an example is taken on that, right? There will be other graphs with other for other configurations, right? Particularly multiple shell side pass, and in that case you will refer to other graph, right? Okay. So sometimes like you may be given multiple graphs, you have to choose the right graph for your configuration. Okay. So you can have a look at those type of graph, right? It's there in Cengel, so you can have a look at those graphs. And if formula is provided, then you can use the formula for doing the calculation or calculating the F value. Okay. So this is the end of our discussion on the shell and tube type of heat exchanger, and basically we are discussing the log mean temperature difference method for heat exchanger design. So in both of these problems, at the end we found the heat transfer area, and then from that we calculated what is the length of the heat exchanger required. So in a way, this is a heat exchanger design. That is, you have been provided the data for the process, the different flow rates and temperatures, etc. So you know all data for the process, right? And you are given that data, and you are, let's say, the designer or the manufacturer of the heat exchanger. So you are calculating the required area of heat exchange and then providing that to the manufacturing department, and then the manufacturing department would make the heat exchanger according to your design, right? So the most important thing in the design would be the heat exchange area, and you have to provide enough heat exchange area so that the processes, whatever parameters are defined, you are able to achieve those parameters. Let's say in this case, you want to provide cooling to hot water, so it should when it enters at 90 and you want the temperature to reduce to 60, the given heat exchanger should be able to do that job. Okay, so this is LMTD approach. We are also going to solve one more example with the same LMTD approach, but with the other type of design of a heat exchanger. Okay, so let me show you that design. It is basically a plate type of heat exchanger. It is basically a plate type of heat exchanger. So I'm giving you the data for that plate type of heat exchanger. So I hope you can recall what is a plate type of heat exchanger. You can see the figure on the left hand side, right? So here what is done is there are multiple plates or sheets. Generally the thickness of each sheet would be very small because you don't want to unnecessarily increase the weight, and don't want to use excess material, because material and weight, the cost is directly related to that, right? So generally you will try to make it as thin as possible for the given mechanical strength, and for means whatever is the minimum possible for the given manufacturing process. So generally you will try to make it very thin, these sheets, though we call it plate type of heat exchanger. You will be using thin sheets, and then you are creating multiple channels, right? As you can see the red lines and the black lines showing two fluids. So we're going to solve an example where you have some hot oil flowing at a particular rate in one direction. So from front to the back side, the oil is flowing. It is entering at a higher temperature, and you want to cool it to a particular temperature. And you have the water source available for that job. So you're pumping it from the opposite direction. You are making a counter flow heat exchanger. Many times these heat exchangers are cross flow also, but in this case it is shown as counter flow, which is thermal point of view, which is the best configuration. uh, right, if you are using cross flow, then you have to get the right chart and formula for finding the correction factor for the log mean temperature difference. So the water is flowing in the opposite side, and there are alternate channels through which they will flow. So let's say oil is flowing through the first channel, right? This rectangular channel, and it is flowing along the depth of the page, right? Then water is flowing from the next channel, right? From the second channel. Okay, then again, third channel, oil is flowing. Fourth channel, water is flowing, and so on. You may have multiple channels like this, and because of the surface area provided by this separating wall or sheet, there is heat transfer between oil and water, right? So this is the configuration of shell and tube, sorry, the plate type of heat exchanger. And here like other things, other dimensions, etc. are shown. The height of the channel is shown as A. While we solve the example, I have written it as h dot ch, that is height of a channel, right? So there are, each channel has a particular height. So that we have I have here it is shown as A, and I have used h suffix ch, height of a channel. And total height of the heat exchanger is, let's say, L, and Though here everything is shown as L because it is taken as a cubic shape heat exchanger, but in our example we have not taken that. So some width of the heat exchanger is defined, and height is also defined, and length is to be found, right? So this is the height of the heat exchanger, this is the width of the heat exchanger, and the length, that is in other words you can also call it depth, right, along the depth of the page. So that is what is to be found. Let me read the data. So a plate fin heat exchanger, actually there are no fins put here, right? So but still it is written as plate fin heat exchanger. A similar example is there in Propera David. Let me check whether the same terminology is used or not. Yeah. So counterflow concentric tube. Yeah, plate type heat exchanger, right? So it's not plate fin, it is plate type heat exchanger. Okay. So a plate type heat exchanger with alternate passages for hot fluid and cold fluid. Each one of them is having single pass. There are configurations possible where there could be multiple passes. That is, this oil may enter from the first channel, it may go on the other side, and it may come back on this side, right? And then the cross flow may be used in that case. So water will also enter from one channel, and if both of them are having say two passes, then water may enter from half the channels on the top side from the right hand side, and take a turn and come out from the right hand side bottom, while oil may enter from this side front side, half the number of channels, and then it may take a U-turn and come back from the bottom half of the heat exchanger. But here it is a single pass and counterflow heat exchanger, and the flow rate of the oil is 0.1 kg per second, and 100 degrees Celsius, it enters at 100 degrees Celsius, comes out at you want it to cool it up to 60. That's the requirement of your process, right? It should go to another component, right, where you are, let's say, providing oil for lubrication. So you have to provide the lubrication between 60 and 100 degree only, right? So in that case you supply it at 60. Then you want to design an oil cooler, and you have the water available as sink, the media for cooling, and this water is available at 30 degrees Celsius, and you can keep the flow rate of 0.2 kg per second, right? So you don't want very high temperature rise of water also, let's say. So you have to limit it, and so you have to kept it 0.2. Okay, and the height of each channel is taken as 5 millimeters, right? Now, this can be varied, right? It can be anything like 10 millimeters or 5 millimeters or 3 millimeters or 2 millimeters. So this decision will be mainly governed uh, by two things. One, the pressure drop, like smaller the uh, channel height, more will be the pressure drop, as you will realize when we solve this example, and then you try other varieties also. And another thing could be the manufacturing consideration also, right? But we have taken it for this calculation is 5 millimeters height. So this A is 5 millimeters. Then let's say there is a restriction on the width, and that is 150 millimeters or 15 centimeters. So this width, right? This is written L, but in our case it is W, the width. So this width has to be you have that much space only available, right? Depth wise there is not much restriction, but width wise it is, let's say, 150 millimeters or 0.15 millimeter, and the height of the heat exchanger is 300 millimeters. So again there is a restriction on height, that it has to fit in, let's say, around 1 feet. So 300 millimeters is the height that you can provide. So in that case, what will be the length or depth of the heat exchanger if the counter flow configuration is used? So we will solve this example in the coming classes. So what you will need here is the table for the oil, which I think I have already provided you, right? That's nothing but it is taken from the appendix of the book Incropera and David. So you can use that table, and at the required at the temperature, what will be the temperature? 160, average of that is 80. So at around 80 °C temperature, you will refer the properties of oil, unused engine oil, what they have written. So we may use the same properties. That will be about the oil properties, and then the water properties would be required. And as you can see here, what is the process? It enters from one direction, the oil at 100 °C at a flow rate of 0.1, and its temperature is to be reduced to 60. And oil enters from the, water enters, cooling water enters from the opposite side at a flow rate of 0.2 kg per second and 30 °C, and comes out at some temperature. So this temperature can be easily found by the energy balance, right? MCP delta T of oil will give you the rate at which the heat transfer has to take place, and the same rate the water should take away the heat. So you can find out the water outlet temperature, and then using that temperature you can find out the log mean temperature difference and for the counter flow, and then you will be later on be able to find out the area required for the heat exchange. But before that, you have to find the heat transfer coefficient and overall heat transfer coefficient, right? So you will find the overall heat transfer coefficient with the help of the individual heat transfer coefficients, and then you will be able to tell what should be the area and what should be the length of the heat exchanger, right? So that basic like parameters are listed here, and the properties are also listed. So height of the each channel you are taking 5 millimeters, width you are taking width of the heat exchanger or width of the channel is one and the same thing. That is 0.15 meter. Height of the total height of this plate heat exchanger is 300 millimeters, and the mass flow rate of oil is 0.1 kg per second. Mass flow rate of the cooling water in this plate heat exchanger is 0.2 kg per second. Number of channels would be the total height divided by the height of each channel. So there are 60 such channels that you can provide. If you change the height of channel, right? If you change, let's say from 5 millimeters to 3 millimeters, then the number of channel would change. You would change it to 100, right? So height we have kept fixed, but the height of the channel you might be able to vary. Okay, so number of channels are 60, right? So, and then the properties and the parameters are listed down. So we'll be solving that example in the next class. Right.